There's no doubt that Ric Charlesworth is not just one of the most interesting people in hockey, a very interesting person, and we just had more and more to talk about. Ric, 10 years in federal parliament, and you've returned, you've taken on the coaching role with the Hockey Roos. Did you always see that you would coach at the elite level?
I was in the parliament for 10 years. I thought we were likely to lose government. My chances of getting into the ministry weren't what I would have liked, but if we lost government, that was irrelevant anyway. And my children are growing up. My marriage had failed, and so I wasn't seeing my children, so I made a lifestyle choice to get out of the federal parliament. Interesting job, terrible lifestyle, I think I said in my book. And so after I made that decision in 1992, in the middle of the year, about June. My view was that so I said I'm not going to stand the next election, which was due at the end of 92 or beginning of 93. I figured I'd go back and practice medicine, and I was looking for a way to get back into the system there, maybe do some more study, get back into the hospital. And Sharon Buchanan rang me up later on in the year. She had just got back from the Barcelona Olympics. She was the captain of the women's team, and she said, well, why don't you think about coaching our team? And I was like, I'd never even given it any consideration. I thought, oh, I never even thought about it, Sharon, And anyway, she talked to me, a few of the other players got in touch with me, and I had done a lot of coaching, but I didn't have any formal qualifications, if you like, but I had a lot of experience playing at the national level.
227 caps for Australia, surely, the qualification.
Yeah, but there's now a system where prior knowledge is worth something, and your coaching accreditation wasn't then. I had a level 2, which was the minimum. And so in the end I applied for the job. The women's hockey, it wasn't Hockey Australia then, it was women's hockey. The bodies were separate, I think took a chance on appointing me. And of course, because Brian Glencross was, I think they felt it was time for a change. Brian was a candidate, as was Brian's assistant Peter Freitag, and there was a range of others. Anyway, I think they took a chance appointing me. And so I found myself, it was the first time I ever had to do a job interview. Because when you graduated medicine, you automatically got a job. And the pre-selection for politics was well, that's a job interview in many ways, but an unusual one. So yeah, I had to actually write up a CV and apply for the job. Anyway, I got the job, and I became the coach of the Hockey Roos. They weren't the Hockey Roos then. That happened while I was there, and it was a sharp learning curve. But as I said, I had done a lot of coaching. I coached junior teams from when I was 17 years old. I coached the state under-21 team for 2 years. I coached my club team for 4 years. And indeed, when I was a player, I coached the senior team, won national championship because the coach wasn't able to go away with us. So as the captain of the team, I had to take them. I was only 22 then, so it was that was back in 1975, or 23 I was then. So I'd had a lot of coaching experience, but no formal, coaching the national team. Wouldn't happen these days. I don't think that someone like myself would get the appointment, but I think there is some benefit in people coming from outside the formal coaching environment sometimes, and obviously I had a range of skills which fitted me for the job. But I was going to work, instead of going a suit and tie as I'd been doing in politics, I was going to work in a tracksuit and a pair of shorts with a group of people who were ambitious, talented, keen to do well. It was a nice environment.
My take on it is you revolutionised the way women's hockey was played. Was that something you went into the job with a preconceived idea, or once you got to the job you realised that they could perhaps play a more dynamic athletic style of play?
Well, I think there are a range of things. I always thought that. I thought we had gifted athletes. I didn't know who was in the group. I had no idea how good we were, But after I'd been there for a few months, I thought, oh God, there's some damn good players here. And I watched some of the old matches that they had played. But my view was that I didn't believe that you should treat women any different to men. A lot of people said, oh, you'll find women are different. No, my view was, well, the game's the same, the rules are the same. We can do anything that boys can do. They may have more power and speed, but relatively our opponents are the same as they are in men's hockey. So there's nothing that's out of bounds. And the rules have changed. The rule had changed in terms of interchange, which I think was a very significant shift that occurred. And so my view immediately was that we wanted to play a dynamic game. Interchange was the entree into that, the thing that allowed us to do it. And so we started to play everybody in every match. And of course that had a very good effect on the group, because previously if you were sitting there as a bench player, implicitly, when you didn't get to play, what was the coach saying? I don't think you're good enough. You know, my view was, no, you're all good enough. We're all going to play. We're going to share the load. We're going to work harder than we did previously. And you all have something to offer it. Because what we knew was happening was a lot of the players who had to play 70 minutes were resting sometimes.
How did the players respond to that change, Rick?
Well, I think the unintended consequence, I can take credit for it now, but the unintended consequence was that suddenly everybody believed they were part of the deal and they got to share the load. And you were, as I said, you're going to play today. We're going to play 16 today. And indeed, there were people in Hockey Australia who said, oh, they're not playing real internationals anymore because, you know, you got 16 playing, they don't even play the whole game. And my view was, yeah, but we used to count as international when you came on for 2 minutes in the past. You know, these guys are actually playing 45 minutes each. And you know, all of that nonsense went on for a while there. But what we were doing was we were broadening our group, deepening the squad. Many more people were getting opportunities, and when you get an opportunity to play, then you start to believe and do. And one of my central principles that we had to provide opportunity for people. You couldn't make a judgment about them unless you got them to play at the top level. And so we deepened our squad. We were able to play with a higher tempo, and the players learnt a new skill, which was being able to go on and off the field. In many other sports they'd been doing it, but not so in hockey. The extraordinary thing about it was that we did that and developed it all during the 90s, so it became quite sophisticated in the women's program, but it still wasn't happening in men's hockey. It didn't happen until 2002, the first time I really saw it in action, which was at the Men's World Cup in KL, and they had to do it there because of the environment in which they were playing. But we started doing it in 1993 in the women's game. And the next rule change that came along was the removal of offside in 1996. And of course that also brought about it with it a whole range of things that were different in terms of how you went about doing what you do.
You'd been to the Olympics as a player 4 times. You're now there as a coach. You finally salute the judge. What were your emotions when the final whistle went, gold medal day?
Oh, in Atlanta? Well, relief, you know. It's the same in Sydney. It's the same in the World Cup. It's the same in every tournament that you play. I mean, I understand how difficult it is to win these things. As a player, when I played, we never had the opportunities, the preparation, whatever. I would get on the plane, we would fly to a tournament. The guy who played next to me was living 5,000 kilometres away. We saw each other for a couple of weeks in the year. Now our players get to play together, to prepare properly, to have all of the support and resources that should be available to them. And so I think that, you know, I think that's what's so different now.
2000, your sixth time at the Olympic Games, and it's in Australia. That must have been a different set of emotions, but a different set of expectations as well.
Well, the expectations were there in '96, You know, we had won the Champions trophies, we had won the World Cup. We went into 96 as a favoured team. 4 years later in Sydney, the expectation was much, much higher because we'd subsequently done well too. But what do? I mean, my view is that we want to play as well as we can all the time and keep lifting the bar and the quality and the standard with which we play. And it's like, maybe there's a lot of teams who are going to the Olympics thinking, oh, well, we'll just play well for that week and we'll surprise everybody and shock them, you know. Usually that doesn't happen, but it can happen. Or, you know, if you're a team that's developing, you're climbing the ladder, then that's what you hope for. You hope for a surprising week, you know, or a couple of flashy results, a couple of unexpected results, or to ambush people. That can happen. That does happen at the Olympics. And in our sport, it happens once a decade. My hope is always that it won't happen to the team that I'm coaching, that we'll be a recipient of that, because what we're trying to do is lift the bar, play with quality, higher quality all the time. The advantage of doing that, of course, is that no team underestimates you. Every time we play, everybody shows everything they've got. And so it helps us play at a higher quality. And that's what we're wanting to do. So I think that expectation's there all the time, and we have high expectations of ourselves, whatever other people are saying and all of that that's going on. Once the game starts and the players have to play, then it comes down to their ability to produce their skill, and you hope that the environment will be fair and that we'll have our share of the luck. If we do that and we play to our quality, then it's going to be damned hard for people to beat us.
You never seem to me to have shied away from favouritism in a tournament by trying to talk your chances down. Is that a fair comment?
Oh, I don't talk them up or down. I think I know what can go wrong. I know all of the problems that are involved. I know that our game is low scoring, and because it's low scoring, the results can be problematic. As I said, at the Olympic Games, every decade, there's one that surprises. In the 70s, it was New Zealand. In the 80s, it was Great Britain. You don't count Moscow, but you could if you wanted to. You know, it was Spain and India. In the 90s, the surprise result, I think, was the Spanish women. And since then, since the turn of the century, then probably the German women winning in 04 was a surprise. You know, who knows?
Kevin Bartlett famously celebrates grand final wins with a cup of tea and a milk arrowroot biscuit, and you hear other people who go partying for 3 or 4 days. What does it look like when Ric Charlesworth is celebrating a gold medal or a major success?
Oh, I think you feel it inside. It's an internal feeling. It's, as I said, the initial feeling is one of great relief that really that which you set out to do has been achieved, and until right at the end, you know, there's no capacity to feel that feeling, and then I suppose you sort of think about getting on with the next thing. But I think that's what it's about. I'm not going to go out and get drunk. That doesn't help me. But I'll feel, I don't know, a glow, a happiness, a warmth inside, which is unique and special. And also, I think the other thing that you feel when you're the coach is you feel this great pride in what the individuals have done. I feel good for all of them because I know how much it means to every player. And I think the other thing is that there's a lot of hockey supporters in the country. There are maybe 150,000 people who play and who are involved in the game. I think that has an effect on all of them. You see these kids, even last night, walking home from a game. Some young boys came up to me and they said, "We just love this game. That was fantastic." You know, I mean, it was a good feeling.
During the period as coach of the Australian women's team, Alison Annan was one of many great athletes you had. You spent some time talking about Alison in your book. She certainly devoted a lot of time to talking about you and her book, and giving the impression that there was at different times there was I'll call it hate love relationship. But she certainly references the huge positive impact you had on her life. Are you aware when you're working with the athletes of the impact you're having on them as more than just their athletic performance?
I hope I am. And as I say to the players, this is the University of Hockey. Okay, you learn a lot about hockey when you're in the program, but hopefully there's other things than your life's changing and growing. Alison was a brilliant athlete, in my view, the most brilliant women's athlete I've seen in our game. And had she been a tennis player, she would have won Wimbledon, in my view. She was immensely talented, hand-to-eye coordination, quick, good competitor. You know, she had endurance. She had everything, and her record in our game, I think, stands there. She scored more than a goal a game, and very few players do that. So yeah, she was a very and at a time when we weren't playing, she was only playing 40, 50 minutes a game. Everyone else was playing for 70. You know, they had more opportunities, if you like to. But she was a brilliant player. I think Alison now lives in Holland. She's got 2 boys, and when I'm there, I visit her, and we're good friends. I hope that you know, that I've made a range of enduring friendships for life from the girls that that were in the teams I play, and a number of them I'm in close contact with. So I think that's a really positive thing that comes out of coaching. I hope the same thing is happening with some of the boys who are in the team. But at different times, my job is to lift the bar for them and to push them. And it's not comfortable going to that place sometimes. And so there has to be the carrot and the stick. You have to be hard sometimes. And I know that players aren't going to necessarily like some of the things I have to say to them. I hope that they know that where those things are coming from. They're coming from my desire to improve them, to make them better.
Who lifts the bar for Ric Charlesworth?
That's a good question. I think that you have internal drivers, and you have people around you who keep you grounded and honest with yourself, and who are in a position. My children are quite happy to be critical of me. My partners at various times, and my wife now, Carmen, they're quite happy to tell me we're not there when my father was alive, when my mother was able to say so. Then they certainly were people who were there. There were mentors in my life. There were coaches in teams that I played in. You know, Frank Murray, who was recently, you know, has been coach of the men and the women for Australia, was probably one of the most significant coaches in my life when I played, who made a difference to the way I thought about hockey and saw it. I think there's a lot of people who are able to provide that sort of critical friendship that you need, that improves you and keeps you grounded at the same time.
You finished up at the Hockey Roos, stepped aside after the Sydney Olympics, and you then went on another pioneering course into high performance management, high performance consulting, and you, I hope I've got the timeline right, you became part of the high performance setup at the Fremantle Dockers?
Yeah, well, I was asked to coach, you know, the Kookaburras after Sydney, but I just was exhausted. And the thing about coaching at this level, it is exhausting. You're giving all the time. You take a lot out of yourself. And so I believed I wasn't ready. I needed a break from that. And the option was there to take a year off and then to take over. The problem was that the World Cup in 2002 was in March, and I didn't think that was fair on the players. And so I said, no, well, I'll take a break and maybe next cycle. and indeed then I worked with the football club, so it gave me a different pace and tone. I was a consultant, which meant you didn't have your hands on the levers all the time. That was an interesting thing to do. I got offered from the Eagles and the Dockers. I went to the Dockers really because they weren't doing well, and I thought it'd be interesting to see what's going on in this place. And I wrote some books. I was invited to write some books, and so I started to do that, and that was good. I was there for a couple of years. I worked with the AIS as a mentor coach for national coaches. That was quite an interesting thing to do. And then Carmen and I decided we wanted to go and live somewhere else for a while. We went and lived in Italy for a year, and so I went out of it. The plan was always to come back at the end of 2004 after Athens and maybe get involved again, but after Athens, of course, the team had done very well. Barry was the coach, he wanted to stay there, and so the position wasn't really available. They said, do you want to do the women? And I said, no, I'll go and do something different. And so that time passed, and then I was offered the job with New Zealand cricket. And so I went there for a couple of years, and again I lived in New Zealand. I had a terrific experience there. I loved the country and the people. It's just like living in Australia really, except they speak funny. And then as you would know, I headed off towards India, which was an interesting experience. It didn't work out as well as it might have, but then I spent a year in India as a technical advisor, leading up until Beijing and afterwards.
I sense you have a passion or belief that's important for India to be strong for the good of the game, and a frustration that they're not. Is that fair?
Oh, look, you know, if India get their act together, we're in trouble, I suspect. I mean, I remember Greg Chappell saying to me when he was there, India's got the 5 best cricket teams in the world if they select them, you know, but maybe they're not going to, and they've got to, you know, there's a lot of money in cricket in India, but I still don't think they've got all of the other stuff around it right. In hockey, they've got 3,000 players in centralised training. We've got 50 in Australia. I mean, there's enormous talent, there's enormous interest. Hockey needs India. India's important for hockey, and there's still I think, a level of support for the game which could grow very suddenly if India was doing well. And so that was, if you like, part of the reason for me going to India, was to see if we could make a difference. I think there was a certain reluctance in India for us to be giving them advice, you know. And so, because what we forget in hockey is that all during the early part of the last century, the Indians were the innovators. They were the ones who changed the shape of the stick and did all the clever things, introduced all the new skills. The mistake that they've made is that they perhaps haven't been contemporary over the last 40 years and grown and developed. We've tried to learn from everybody. I think India got a bit isolated. I think that's changing now. They've got wonderful players. They've got enormous potential for the game. I want them to do well. I want the Indian leagues to get going and our players to be able to play there and to make their living from doing so. And I think for the game worldwide, that can be a fantastic development.
So if look at your career as a long-term successful player, politician, successful first-class cricketer, your coaching of the women, involvement in Australian rules football, cricket in New Zealand, hockey in India. What are some of the key things that you've learnt that make you or go towards making you the coach that you are now?
Well, I think I've learned something from everybody from every environment. Maybe you've got to be a bit of a bowerbird. You take stuff from everywhere to add. You read about coaches, you learn from coaches. In the end, I think that my job is to help the athletes realise their potential. If we get enough first choice athletes, we have a game in Australia which is unique to us. We've got to be true to that and play that way. And we've got to keep wanting more, not feeling satisfied with what we've done already. And hopefully we keep improving at a faster rate than the others. When I was coaching the the women's team, there used to be a view after a while that, oh, well, it's someone else's turn now. You've been on top for 4, 5, 6 years. You can't keep doing that. And my view was always, well, if we keep learning more and working harder, then there's no reason we can't. But if you lose that passion, or you lose that excitement, or you lose that drive, then yeah, other people will go past you, and you'll slip back. And so I suppose that's the thing that drives me and pushes me, is that we have to have that. Now I think I want to play an aggressive game which is expansive and which says we want to make goals. But of course, at the same time you want to make them, you have to be good at defending. And everybody has their own way of defending, and you can defend by trying to make goals as well. One of the things we've been working on is to try and make our defence better. And how do we go about doing that? And we've developed some things. We've had working with us for a while Paul Lissick, who was former coach of Germany. Paul sees the game quite differently to me, but we've learned a lot of things from him. We don't take all of those things and add them to our game, but there are bits of that are important for us, from my experience in other sports and from seeing what happens in other sports. We learn. There is no game in the world, for instance, that is more like hockey now than Australian rules football. Now that might sound an extraordinary thing, but when you look at the game, footy's a bit different. It takes 3 or 4 kicks to get the ball from one end to the other. We can do it in one pass. But they don't have offside, we don't have offside. Almost every other game's got an offside rule. We can play on from every situation, they can play on from every situation. We have unlimited interchange. They're trying to limit their interchange, but they basically got the same thing happening there. And in the end, it's pointy where you score, at the end of the field where you score, and it gets crowded.
And we're all trying to get worked for the numerical advantage.
And you're all trying to get, and it's an invasion game, but at the end, when you get to the pointy end, it's crowded. You've got to try and make spaces for yourself there, and you've got to try and get there quickly and do this sort of thing. So we have more in common with them than any other game. And indeed, there's a lot to learn from watching that.
You've referenced a number of times that opportunities have come up. When one door's closed, or you've closed the door, another door's open. What do you see as being your future?
I don't know. My contract's been extended. It was to be finishing at the end of this year. It's been extended until 2014, I think, up until the Commonwealth Games. I didn't want to extend it any further because I really don't think that... I think if you want to do this job, you need the energy and drive to do it. And after a break from hockey, I came back in 2009 with that energy and drive. I'd forgotten how hard it was. It's draining and damned hard work. And I think that's a foreseeable target, 2014. After that, I'll be ready for retirement, but I don't think I'm going to retire. I think I'll be involved in things. But I still have young children, and I delight in being able to be involved with them more and more. And, it's a regret to me that I am still away too much while they're growing up. Certainly, I hope over the next period of time after the London Olympics out of the way, I'll have a little bit more time for them, even while I continue in this job.
And preparation for London, it's on track?
It's never on track or perfect, and I made the point to one of the coaches the other day, the day before the thing starts, we'll be saying, I wish we'd done this, it wouldn't have been nice if we could have done that, and it is always the case. There is always more things you could have done. In the end, you have to prioritise them, and, we're here in Cairns now, in the last phase of the preparation. The plan was that we would be here with the 16 or 18 or 20 who were going to the Olympics. We got 24 here because the range of guys are injured, so how could you say it's on track? We've had more injuries than we would have anticipated or expected. There's always a background, level of injuries in any group and any team. But so that's been worse than anticipated. Until the 29th of July, we're not going to know what team's going to go on the field in London, although we've got a pretty good idea, or a better idea now than we had 3 weeks ago. So I think that it's an iterative process. Every day you put another brick in the wall and you're building something that hopefully will be substantial and sustainable and solid in London. But there's still plenty of polishing to do. I never know how our team's going to play. I wish I did. I wish there was some way of knowing. But when the game starts, the players have to do it on the field, make decisions and judgments, sort things out, solve problems. The coaches tinker a little bit on the edge. So our time is spent preparing them to do that. I think they're well on the way to being ready to do what they have to do in London. I hope it's enough. But you never know for sure. And sport's a peculiar thing, and our game in particular. It's not like a footy match where you make 40 chances and they make 20, you usually win. Sometimes we make 15 chances, the other team makes 4 and you lose. So that's what you have to guard against.
A final question. What does Ric Charlesworth do to relax?
I read, I listen to music, I spend time with my kids. I enjoy the company of other people, although lots of people think I'm a hermit. I actually look forward to those sorts of social environments in which I can do that. I love going to the movies, and there's not much time for anything else. I like walking and riding and just, if you like, being able to just be by myself. I quite like that, and I feel relaxed walking along the beach, riding my bike, doing those things when I'm not, when I'm by myself. That's quite good too.
I lied, I do have one more question. What sort of music's on your iPod?
Oh, it's eclectic. You've got to go back to the 60s, you know.
That's a good thing.
There's the music that I remember growing up with in the 60s and 70s. There's not much headbanging stuff from now. There's Bocelli. There's Bruce Springsteen. There's Van Morrison. There's the Culture Club though, and there's Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra. God, it's scary, isn't it?
It is a big mix. All of Australia hopes that the music playing in the final, the gold medal playoff at London, is our national anthem. Ric Charlesworth, thank you very much for spending time with us today. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.